What if the final book of the Bible is not only about beasts, trumpets, and visions, but about Christ himself standing at the center of history, calling us to live with purpose and purity even in the face of chaos? Stay with me, because today we will dive into the book of Revelation, an overview, and you will see how its message still speaks directly to your life right now. Welcome to Divine War Stories, the channel where we explore the great battles of faith, the struggles of the soul, and the victories only Christ can give. If you're looking for clarity, encouragement, and truth explained in a simple way, you're in the right place. Now, let's step into Revelation together. The book of Revelation begins not with terror, but with Christ revealed in glory, walking among the churches and speaking to his people. This picture is not meant to frighten but to comfort, reminding us that even in times of confusion or persecution, Jesus has not abandoned his followers. He is close, attentive, and calling his people to walk in integrity. Holiness, in this sense, is not about perfection beyond human reach, but about living with a heart that desires to honor God. It is a call to authenticity, to let Christ shape our daily actions, thoughts, and words. When we hear about holiness, many think it means never making mistakes. But Revelation shows us that Christ calls his church to faithfulness, not flawless performance. He knows we are human, he knows our struggles, yet he invites us to lift our eyes to him. Holiness is about separation from what corrupts and dedication to what brings life. It's about saying no to patterns of destruction and yes to the one who renews. Jesus asks for this because our soul, more than any possession or achievement, is the most valuable treasure we have. The letters to the 7 churches in Revelation make this very clear. Each church receives both encouragement and correction, because Christ cares deeply about the direction of their hearts. He is not indifferent. He points out what strengthens them and warns against what weakens them. This is not condemnation, but guidance. Just like a loving father who corrects his children so they can grow, Jesus corrects us so that we can live free from the chains of sin. Holiness, then, is a relationship, responding to his voice daily. Why does Christ call us to live differently, even though he knows we cannot achieve perfect purity on our own? Because he desires to protect what is eternal within us. Everything in this life fades, wealth, power, success, but the soul remains. And if our soul is neglected, we risk losing what matters most. Christ's commands are not burdens, but safeguards. He is not trying to steal joy, but to preserve our deepest joy, the joy of walking in his presence and being ready for his coming kingdom. As Revelation unfolds, it shows great struggles between good and evil. Yet at every moment, Christ is sovereign. The message is clear: holiness is not optional, because the battle is real. It is like armor in a war zone. Without it, we are unprotected. But with Christ clothing us, we are secure. This is not about religious rules, but about aligning with the one who has already won the victory. When you choose to walk with him, you are not carrying the weight alone. He equips, he strengthens, and he lifts you when you stumble. Think of holiness as saying yes to love. Revelation describes Christ as the Lamb who was slain, yet lives forever. His sacrifice was the greatest act of love, and our response is to reflect that love in how we live. It is not about fear of punishment, but about gratitude for grace. Christ calls his people to holiness because he wants them to shine in a world of darkness. He wants their lives to be evidence that hope is real, that forgiveness is possible, and that his kingdom is coming. The visions in Revelation can seem overwhelming: dragons, trumpets, bowls of wrath, but at the center is always Christ. He is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. His presence gives meaning to every symbol. And in calling us to live set apart, he reminds us that holiness is not an unreachable standard, but a daily choice of trust. When we fail, we return to him. When we succeed, we give him glory. Holiness is less about being spotless, and more about being surrendered to the one who is spotless. Christ knows our weakness, and that is why he does not simply command holiness, he provides the Spirit to guide us. Revelation speaks of those sealed by God, marked not by outward perfection, but by belonging to Christ. This seal is his Spirit within us, empowering us to resist compromise and to remain faithful even when the world pulls us in other directions. Holiness, then, is not self-effort, but Spirit-empowered living. It is learning to listen to his whisper in the noise of life. The book of Revelation also shows us the ultimate destiny of those who follow Christ. A new heaven and a new earth, where there will be no more tears, no more death, and no more suffering. Holiness prepares us for that reality. It is like training for a life that will never end. Christ calls us to this path because he knows what awaits, an eternity of joy in his presence. And he does not want anyone to miss it. His call to holiness is a call to readiness, to be awake when the final day arrives. So when you hear Christ saying, "Be holy," do not hear it as an impossible demand, but as an invitation to walk closely with him. He is not asking for perfection, but for devotion. He is not measuring you by failures, but by your willingness to get back up and keep following. Revelation ends with the Spirit and the bride saying, "Come." It is a call not only to Christ, but also from Christ, to live set apart for him, because he is coming soon. Revelation shows us that holiness is not about isolating ourselves from the world, but about shining within it. The churches were placed in real cities, surrounded by culture, politics, and temptations. Christ didn't tell them to run away, but to remain faithful where they were. That is the same with us today. Holiness means living differently in the middle of daily life, at work, at home, in relationships, reflecting Christ in the way we treat people, in honesty, compassion, and love. This is practical holiness, not distant theory. When Christ says, "Be holy," he is calling us to remember who we belong to. In Revelation, the people of God are marked as his own. They are not defined by their failures or their past, but by his redemption. And this is the good news. Holiness is not about trying to become worthy. It is about living as people already loved, already forgiven, already chosen. Christ calls us to live in a way that reflects the identity he has given us, so that the world may see his light through us. Revelation also reminds us that compromise with sin is dangerous. The churches that tolerated false teaching or corruption were warned, not because Christ wanted to reject them, but because he wanted to heal them. Holiness is about protecting the heart from compromise, guarding the soul from the things that seem harmless but slowly destroy faith. Jesus calls us to vigilance, not out of fear, but out of love. He knows that when the heart is divided, life becomes empty. Wholeness, not division, is his plan for us. The Lamb at the center of Revelation gave his life for us. That sacrifice shows how valuable we are to him. And this is why he calls us to live holy lives, because he treasures our souls. If you had something priceless in your hands, you would protect it. In the same way, Christ looks at you and says, "Your soul is worth everything." His commands are not chains, they are shields. To walk in holiness is to let him guard what matters most. In every vision of Revelation, there is always a contrast. The faithful versus the corrupt, the lamb versus the beast, light versus darkness. These contrasts show us the stakes of our choices. Holiness is aligning with the Lamb, standing on the side of love, truth, and eternal life. It does not mean living without struggles, it means choosing who we belong to. And belonging to Christ means that even when the world trembles, our future is secure in him. Holiness also brings freedom. Many think living apart for Christ means losing something, but Revelation shows it is the opposite. Those who live for themselves become enslaved by fear and destruction, but those who live for Christ experience freedom no power on earth can take away. Holiness is not a prison, it is release from chains. It allows us to walk with clear hearts, unashamed, because we know who we serve and where we are going. At the end of Revelation, the vision of the New Jerusalem shines with beauty. This city is described as spotless, radiant, and pure, not because of human effort, but because Christ himself makes all things new. That is the final picture of holiness, not struggle, but restoration. Christ calls us now to live in light of that future, to let the hope of what is coming shape how we live today. Holiness is anticipation. It is living today as citizens of the kingdom that is near. So what does this mean for you right now? It means you do not need to carry shame about not being perfect. Christ knows. That is why he came. What he asks is your willingness to follow, to trust him, and to let him transform your heart step by step. Revelation's message is not to crush us with fear, but to lift us with hope. The King is returning, and he wants his people ready, not flawless, but faithful, watching, and walking with him. That is why the call to holiness is really a call to relationship. It is Christ saying, "Stay close to me." He knows that closeness changes everything. You cannot spend time in His presence without being transformed. And that transformation is what Revelation celebrates, the victory of Christ in us. Holiness is not an unreachable standard, but the natural result of living with Him daily, hearing His voice, and responding with obedience. It is the journey of love. So, as you reflect on the book of Revelation, remember this: it is not only about the end, but about how you live now. Christ calls you to live differently because He values your soul more than anything else. He wants you to be ready for His return, to live with hope, and to shine His light where you are. Read the scriptures daily, because His word keeps your heart awake. And seek a church that truly preaches Christ, not only in words, but in actions, serving the poor, the widows, and the orphans, just as He commanded. If this message spoke to you, let it guide your steps today. Stay faithful, stay awake, and walk with Christ, the Lamb who reigns forever.